And good afternoon. Welcome to the Point. I'm Jon Noyes with Stand to Reason, and perhaps as you're watching this, you may have already heard and probably read a bunch about the harmful language list put out by Stanford University. It includes words like American, blind study, brave, addict, and even the term preferred pronoun as examples of language that should be eliminated from everyday vernacular and actually like language in general. And the list found its beginnings in the IT department, the technical department of that university with terms like slave drive, but quickly grew. And while it might be easy to dismiss this news as silly, which I guess in some context and to some extent it is kind of silly, there's something else going on under the surface. And in the next 10 minutes, we're going to dig under the veneer into the more pressing issue on this episode of To the Point. So stick around, and at the end of 10 minutes or so, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the deeper issues involved with what's going on at Stanford University regarding the elimination of certain words, classifying them as harmful. And here at To the Point, we look at culturally relevant issues from a Christian perspective. And remember, as you're watching, I see some people commenting right now. It's great to see you guys. Remember to add your comments to the comment section. If you have any questions at the end of the commentary, I'll do my best to answer them. So again, I'm Jon Noyes. This is To the Point. Welcome. Today, all of the terms that are listed on this document sent out by Stanford are no longer acceptable. And I'd like to, according to Stanford, I'd like to just take a brief look at this document. So I'm going to look down. Normally I'm looking up at you guys, but I want to read directly from the document here. This is called the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative, the EHLI, and this is a PDF that's online at stanforddaily.com. You know what? I'll put a link to it in here while we're chatting, and then you'll be able to maybe track with me, unless Harmony already beat me to it, which she may have because she is amazing. Let me throw this link in here. And now you can click on that link and kind of track with me here. This is described as a multi-year project to address harmful language in IT at Stanford. This document here, it says the goal of the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative is to eliminate many forms of harmful language, including racist, violent, and biased, e.g., disability bias, ethnic slurs, gender bias, implicit bias, sexual bias language in and on Stanford websites and in their code. And then this document, it's 16 pages. It's not very long. You can go through it and it categorizes these words according to things like ableist. So here's some terms. I'm just going to pick them out randomly. Addict. I mentioned it at the beginning. Addict, a person with substance use disorder, is the word or the phrase that we're to consider. Instead of calling somebody an addict, we say that they're a person with substance use disorder. There's a couple addicted. Basket case was a curious one to me. Basket case, Stanford University and the officials there think that we should no longer be using the word basket case, as in that person's a basket case, they're super nervous and running around. That's the word we should use the word nervous, and it lists reasons why. And it says originally basket case, according to Stanford at least, originally referred to one who lost all four limbs and therefore needed to be carried around in a basket. Now, which is really interesting about this word is I know a gentleman named Nick Vujicic very, very well. He's a good friend of mine. I serve with him at Life Without Limbs, and he's got no arms and legs. And I'm almost positive Nick has used this term, but not only has he used this term, I'm sure that if I use this term in his presence, he would not find any offense to it. A blind study, instead of blind study, we should say masked study. This is one that I'm interested in, and actually committed suicide Instead of saying committed suicide, we say died by suicide. Ableist language, and the reason the ableist language that trivializes the experience of people living with mental health conditions. So when you say committed suicide, they think that it trivializes the experience. And some of these things, I'm not saying that all of these are bad either, right? And certainly I've actually stopped saying committed suicide, and I say die by suicide. And just to offer less offense to people, because I don't think there's any issue in it. Now, there are some interesting words. If you go to the ageism section, right, they categorize it. A gray beard is no longer acceptable to call somebody a graybeard. You use the person's name is what it says, senile, a person suffering from senility. I'm not sure what the difference is there. Colonialism is another category. And the word that they have, or the phrase, is Philippine Islands. We should just say the Philippines, the Republic of the Philippines. And these are just some examples here of what we're talking about. And all of these terms ultimately, according to Stanford, they're no longer acceptable. According to Stanford, we have to keep up to date with the cultural lords, and we don't. Well, if we don't do it, we'll be labeled as a hater or bigot or racist or worse. So we're going to get into this, and this kind of actually leads to the point here that's missed. We're told that this language is harmful, and what I want to ask the folks at Stanford is, what do they mean by harmful? Because words can be harmful. There's laws and Supreme Court cases that have been decided around appropriate kinds of speech that are used, right? If speech is used and it puts somebody in a clear and imminent danger, it can't be used. The famous example is if somebody yells fire in a crowded theater. You can't do that because it puts people at risk, the rush of people. So the question I want to ask these people who come up with this list is, what do they mean by harm? How are these? Because if it's just a matter of feelings, and so we're going to get into this, I'm not sure that we have the right not to be offended, right? And ultimately, when we start talking about this issue, I think this actually has very little to do with even being offended or even having these words harm people. Most of these terms, they don't offend anyone. Instead, it's about truth. And this is where the underlying point is. And this is what I think a lot of the commentaries that I read, some of them are linked here, I think they miss. This isn't about the words. This isn't about the harm that these words cause. It's not certainly about any victims of these words. I think that this is about truth. And because these changes will be changed again in just a short period of time. A perfect example of this is on the list that I was just referring to out of Stanford on the website. I linked to it. The term preferred pronoun is listed as a term that we should no longer use. For years, the same people who supported this kind of list from Stanford pushed that term, preferred pronouns, out into the cultural landscape. But now it's time to change that landscape again, and without but we just say pronouns without the word preferred. Why? Well, because preferred supports the idea that there's a personal choice in the matter. So now they're gonna shift it, and it's beneficial to them to shift the word choices that we use, because the narrative is being changed, and the minds behind the shift know, and now they're the people who control the language, right? So the narrative is being shifted, and the people who control that shift are the people who control the language of the culture, control the narrative of what's accepted as true. Do you get what I'm saying? So there's something much deeper going on here, and a lot of the commentaries I've read on this, I feel like they miss this point. It's not just about the word changes. The word changes are fine. Some of them I actually agree with. I mentioned that about died by suicide. We should, instead of committed suicide. Some of these things, I think we can take an honest look at, and then maybe revise how we speak. But the issue is deeper. The issue is about truth, and the people who control the narrative are the people who control the language. And as the language is shifted, those people who shift the language have worldviews. So over time, as more and more people conform to the new language rules of the culture, our perspective of reality starts to shift in that direction. We see this in the gender uh, the gender discussion right now. Controlling the language allows you to control the direction of the culture, right? And this is how the culture wars fought. They set the standards and for some reason we, when I say we, Christians or the people who subscribe to a traditional Christian worldview, we for some reason we've failed to present important ideas as if they're actually true. What I mean by this is that they're true for all people in all places at all times. We see this again in the context of the gender discussion. In essence, in order in the hopes of not offending people or not to be rude to people, we ourselves buy into the lie of relativism by representing these things as tolerable out in the culture. Now, I'm not saying we riot and we do violence, no, but I think that there comes a time when we have to take a stand and say, well, no, I'm not going to follow these guidelines. And so it's not necessarily about the words, but it's about the ideas behind them and the attack on truth. What concerns me the most is that the progressive culture and the minds behind it, its advance at least, is that they destroy the old standards while making moral claims, and that's offensive. You can't use that term. Offensive speech is dangerous, etc. And here we even see it in this list. This is a list of harmful words. Right? This is part of what makes this thing so dangerous. All the claims are wrapped in a moral veneer. Either you do what we say or you're an immoral person. And then notice in the context of the discussion that we're having regarding language standards, many of the terms that are at issue are racialized. They're racial in nature. Like this poses a real difficult problem for you and for me. If we argue in favor of the current terminology, we remain we argue in favor of the current terminology to remain in place. We'll be labeled racist, bigoted, and hateful, and this is a distinguishing characteristic of progressive culture: complete and utter ideological surrender or destruction. Right. The reason why I think the culture is being won by the progressive camp is because the cultural battle, as it rages on, the progressives have a standard that they actually believe, and then they enforce those standards. And I think that we could actually learn from this. The way we win the culture is we actually form a robust Christian worldview. And then we believe that worldview is true in an objective sense. And then we live that worldview out in all spheres of our life. And this includes taking an honest look at the use of language in the culture. Are we willing to possibly leave political ideologies behind us when they don't line up with the biblical ethic? And some of these things on this list, if we're honest, are maybe outdated, and it's time to move on from them. Maybe some of the words that Stanford lists could be removed from our vernacular in order to push the conversation forward and then win the culture, not placate truth. I'm not saying we sacrifice truth here. I'm saying that we pursue truth and wherever it leads us, regardless of where we currently stand. And either way, we need to be setting the standard, I think, of the culture. Instead of living by the standard that's set for us, we need to be setting the standard. And this is why political correctness in general carries the day. You see, they set the standard, and then we fall in line. Now we find ourselves in a place where we live in a world where it's our right not to be offended. I mentioned this at the onset of our time today, just a couple minutes ago. That means if anyone says anything at any time that offends you or your sensibilities, that thing ought not be said. And this has led to complete cultural insanity. So much so that we have one of the best, the top educational institutions in our country, trying to eliminate words. And since this article came out and since I've been reading about it, Stanford has backed off, to be honest with you. And I think that's because of the cultural onslaught. There's been a lot written about this. So they've kind of backed off of it. And what that shows me is that I don't think that these people actually really do believe what they're saying. I think that these people understand what's going on, what I've explained, and they understand that there's a culture war raging, and the way that they win the culture war is that they take control of the language. And if they control the language, they control how we speak. And if they control how we speak, they can control how ideas are conveyed. And if you don't fall in line, you can be canceled. And that's the underlying principle. It's not so much are these words hurtful when they're said. It's what's behind the idea of shifting the words. There's always bigger ideas at play underneath what we originally think is happening. And that's one of the things I just think is lacking from this conversation. I just haven't seen much of it. There's a few people that have done a good job at it. So with that, guys, that's pretty much it. About 15 minutes. My thoughts on this issue relates to a bigger issue. And now what I'll do is I'll try to scroll through the comments here. If you do have any comments or questions, if you have a question, just write question in bold. And I really do appreciate you guys. Oregon, Isaac, you are always here, man. Thank you for showing up. Let's see here. Lori, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate you guys. You guys are so good. And thank you, Harmony, for adding these links. She was like way ahead of me, of course. It's racist against baskets. Yeah. It's basket case is that one surprised me. Basket case is on there, and nobody knows the history of the word. I'm not saying it's bad to know the history of the word and then maybe allow that to, like, let's just be honest. Can we just be real with each other? Like, there are some words that when said, they might offend you and they don't offend me. I recognize that. And if you tell me in the context of a conversation, please don't use that word, it offends me, I'm probably not going to use the word because I think there's other ways that I can express myself. But I'm not going to alter the truth of reality according to your personal preferences, your feelings. So the clearest example of where this comes into play is in the gender discussion. I have friends who are identifying as a gender that they are not. When they ask me to call them by their preferred, or I can't even say preferred pronouns anymore, but their preferred pronouns, what the pronouns that they would prefer to be called, I actually explain myself and say, you know what, I can't do that because I think that's lying. And what I do is I don't go out of my way. If in this instance, it's a girl that's identifying as a boy, so I don't go out of my way to call her a her. What I do is I go out of my way to call her by her name. Because names are not names are fluid. Gender is not. Does that make sense? So even if she changes her name, I'll respect her and call her by her chosen name. Names are something that we assign to people when they're born. Human beings do. Gender is something that is assigned to a person by God when they're conceived. So anyways, this is just my thought process. So it's okay to think about these words. I'm not trying to offend people. I'm not going out of my way to offend people. Actually, it's the opposite. I'm going to go out of my way not to offend people, but I'm not going to sacrifice truth. I'm not going to sacrifice my ideals. And I think that we need to, as Christians, kind of be living this out. I think we can be better at this, being not being seen as compromising, but being thoughtful when we speak to people, listening to what people are saying, and then actually think about it instead of just, listening to whatever it is that whatever podcasts or whatever news that you're listening to or reading. We actually process it through our own minds, and we listen to the people who we disagree with, and then we think about it. Okay, well, you know what? Slave drive, right? Slave drive. Well, maybe there's a better term for slave drive. I don't know. I don't think there's much harm in at least thinking about it. And but in the end, like I said in our brief time together already, I don't think the people who actually say they have an issue with that term actually have an issue with that term. It's deeper. Anyways, enough of that. Nick is the man. Very good friend of mine. I've known him for years. Really good dude. let's see here. Paula, just here, but I have to wonder what happened to free speech and why have so many become offended so easily? I think there's two issues here, right? That you bring up, Paula. What happened to free speech? I actually don't think that this is an attack on free speech. I think that it's more of an ideological affront, but not. I'm still free to say what I want. Certainly there's cultural pressures, and that's the underlying attack on truth, right? That come in that. But then the second issue here is offended so easily. Yeah, I mean, and Christian, I'm talking to you too. As Christians, we should be the least offendable people on the planet, right? We have a heavenly hope. We've been rescued, and we know the true story of reality, right? We have the light. We know what's going on. And so when we face and we're confronted with a fallen and a broken world and the people who navigate that who are lost in darkness, it shouldn't surprise us that they can't see the truth because they're in the dark. So it should cause us hopefully to have be brokenhearted, for people who don't know the truth, and then move towards them in love and compassion. Um, you know, correct people, and this is Paul, 2 Timothy, correct people in gentleness, so that perhaps God will grant them repentance and the truth, which is like so cool. So, anyways, there's yeah, but we shouldn't be offended either, because like I see so many times that the Christians are so offended. This is offensive. This is offensive. I try never to say that, even if I am offended. And there are times when people offend me all the time online. Or when I'm out giving a talk say I'm at a college campus, I'll have conversations with people that they'll call me names or they'll offend me. My own family sometimes will say I'm deluded, or, I believe in a sky day. I mean, all that's offensive, but I'm not going to take offense to it. That's something that we can choose not to do, right? We can choose not to be offended. We focus right. These are but momentary light afflictions, producing in us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. Right, these trials and tribulations. Paul puts a chains and the links in a chain together. Right, these tribulations produce perseverance, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope, and a hope that does not disappoint. So we have a hope that does not disappoint, regardless of what we're going through, even if somebody's severely persecuting us, which I don't see a ton of persecution happening in the culture right now yet. It's coming, just not yet. But we have hope in that. That hope never goes away because it's a hope that does not disappoint, and it's actually built. It's supported by a chain that starts with trials, with tribulations. These are but momentary light afflictions. They're momentary in the timeline of glory, on the timeline of eternal bliss. These struggles that we go through are momentary. And not only that, but Paul there, he tells us that they're momentary. But then notice the second thing that Paul tells us in that verse: the momentary light afflictions producing in us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. He's using these trials. God is using these trials in our life to produce something in us that otherwise wouldn't be there. Ultimately, God uses the trials of life to prepare us for glory, to rule and reign alongside King Jesus in heaven. So that these two things can keep us from getting offended. And when somebody else is offended, I'd ask what it is that's offending them, and then we assess the situation. Maybe we said something offensive to them. A saying that we have at Stand the Reason is, the gospel is offensive enough. Don't add any offense to it. And I think that that's an important thing to get through, because the news that we have, right? The good news is only good news after they hear the bad news, and the bad news is always offensive. So the way that we can communicate that with people, if we can alter that in a way that's understandable, that people can grasp, that they don't take offense to, right? The cross of Christ is a stumbling block, so anyways, I think you guys get the gist. Yes, Lori, I agree with you. Far too many people are offended today. Wonder how many, let's see this one. Wonder how many people have to deal with this in their lives. I don't know how many actually do. I mean, how many people do you think, how many people do you think actually are offended by these things? I mean, we see it on social media and stuff. but out into everyday life. And that's what I mean is I think that there's something bigger going on here. It's a these aren't these are truth encounters, right? These aren't the issue isn't always what we think the issue is, and I think that there's something bigger going on here. It's not about the words that we use. It's an attack on truth. It's attack on objective truth, the true story of reality, and the cultural influencers seek to augment that and change that. So then, as we comply, we view the world according to the way that these folks would like us to view the world, as opposed to pushing back at it. Um, yeah. Let's see here. Isaac, I saw the imprecise language, the term abort. Oh, yeah. This term can unintentionally raise religious moral concerns over abortion. Use cancel, ends instead. Yeah. So on that document I linked to, one of the words is abort. Like in computer terminology, right? Abort has a certain meaning. End, stop it, right? Abort. In the military personnel, I mean, how many times have we watched like a spy show? Abort, 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 abort the mission. Stop, get out of here. Stop what you're doing right away. And according to Stanford, this is now it shouldn't be said anymore because it could possibly evoke some type of religious or moral concern over abortion. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see here. Bruce, man, thanks for tuning in, Bruce. It seems that rather than let the natural evolution of culture control the language, they've decided to impose their relative view on the rest of society. I agree. It's not holding up a standard of pursuing truth. Absolutely. This is really well said, Bruce, actually. I think this is really well said. Words evolve. They evolve, right? But they have meaning too. So certain words, when you change the meaning of them, it's no longer that thing. We saw it in the marriage debate, right? Marriage is something. It's a word that we use to describe something, like ashtray, right? Ashtray is a word that we use. When I say ashtray, most of you who are 35 and older know what an ashtray is. The younger folks might not because they don't smoke. But ashtray, you have a picture in mind. Now, you can call an ashtray food, but it's still an ashtray. You don't eat it. You don't consume it because that's not what it's meant for. It's the same thing with marriage. Marriage is something that was given to us by God. It means something. Union of it's one man, one woman, one flesh, one life. Anything outside of that is not marriage. I mean, we can redefine marriage, but it's not marriage anymore. And so words matter. And when we start changing the language of the culture, whoever controls that change in many ways controls the narrative of the culture. And that's kind of like what Bruce is saying here, only way more succinct than me, and in our culture, it's influenced by relativism. I mean, our culture is highly relativistic. And you do you, boo, is the the kind of ethos or the ethic of the day. Just let me do me and you do you. As long as you don't hurt me, I'm good, right? But it doesn't. When we start trying to live these things out, it's not going to work because the world. Keep in mind, guys, the world is a certain way, right? The world doesn't bend and contort itself according to your desires or my likes or dislikes, my personal preferences. The world is a certain way. So that's reality. Reality is the way the world really is. And when you don't live according to reality, you bump into it. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing here the bumping into reality. Now, the question is, will the truth seekers, will the Christians ultimately, will we stand firm on the truth and not give in to the cultural pressures, not bend our language when it doesn't need to be bent? When it doesn't need to be bent. I've belabored that point enough, I think. That's the question. Are we gonna take another step towards progressivism in this? And I think that we saw it when with all the gender language, these preferred pronouns. What's that document? What is a woman? I think I did a to the point on that documentary. What is a woman? Matt Walsh, Daily Wire stuff. I thought that documentary showcased exactly what we're saying here, that that there is truth and it's knowable. And one part of that knowable truth is that that we know what a woman is and we know what a man is, and they are not the same, and they are not a man cannot be a woman. And I think, and oftentimes what we've done in an attempt to be attractive, polite, nice, uh, we've given too much ground in that conversation, and now it's hard to take back ground once it's lost. So that's why I like to have this discussion. I'm not so much concerned with Stanford University's IT department and the way that they're changing language. That's not the issue. The issue is much deeper and it's much larger. You got to remember who the movers and the shakers are of the culture. I think it's many times it starts with the magisterium, the colleges, the academics. And what happens is the academics and the colleges, they philosophize and they come up with these ideas and they trickle down through the student body. It takes years and years and years and years, and eventually it trickles down into the culture. And when we see this stuff happening, we need to be speaking up. I think a little bit we can be doing better about it. Let's see here. The issue is truth. Say no to just say, that should be like a T-shirt. Relativism. Just say no. Yes, just say no to relativism. The issue is truth. It's always truth. And keep in mind, this is something that's really near and dear to me, because this is a mistake that I often made, and I still do at certain points. Our battle isn't with people. Our battle is with ideas, right? Greg, he says it. These aren't power encounters. They're truth encounters. Yes, there's a component of power, right? I think people are trying to take power and grab at power to lord it over others in our culture. But it's ultimately to do with the truth. Our battle is not among the flesh and blood. Our battle is a spiritual battle. It's a battle over the truth, which brings me back to the question: will we stand firm? This doesn't give us, by the way, license to be arrogant, to be mean, to be haughty, to be divisive for divisiveness sake. That's not who we are as Christians, right? We play by a different set of rules. Maybe the world would be that way, but then that goes back to what I said before, that we shouldn't be surprised when the world is like that. Oftentimes the people who are in the world aren't able to have civil discourse because they're in the world. They're lost. They're in darkness. But doesn't mean we fall into that. We always defend truth. Good point here. Here's Howard 71. I've heard of suicide being called opted out of life as news speak. Yeah, this is like a topic I'm pretty involved with. I speak on suicide a lot. I've heard it too. I think that it's definitely an attempt to trivialize or relativize the issue to somehow make it more acceptable within the culture, but I haven't seen it take. And the reason why I haven't seen it take is because suicide has devastating effects, not just on the person who dies by suicide, but on the family and the community that remain. And I think when you say, "Oh, they opted out," I think still in our world, people who have experienced suicide in their families or in their community find that highly offensive, and they should. So yeah, that's a good example of words, language that behind them. Opted out is it's just two words, right? Who cares? Just two words. Just say whatever you want. Just two words. Was a deeper meaning here, and this deeper philosophy behind it. But yeah, that's a good good observation there. Yes, harmless as doves and wise as serpents. Innocent, I've heard it. Innocent as doves and shrewd as vipers. Absolutely. Be smart, be wise, but never sacrifice character. We never sacrifice character, but we are smart and wise. Let's see here. Bruce, there are many complaints in quotes about this liberal strategy, but it seems our discussion should be in how to combat this worldview. Absolutely. We stand firm. We stand firm. And I've done it to the point on this, I believe, probably a year ago now. But we stand firm. We don't bend. We don't break, and we live out our Christian convictions. And even in the face of canceling, I've mentioned him before, and I've actually think I've done it to the point on him. Dave Chappelle is a stand-up comedian, and in one of his stand-up routines. Now, I don't recommend that you go watch Dave Chappelle. He's crass, but I respect him because he holds firm in the face of a cultural onslaught. That's the LGBTQ plus community has sought to just cancel him, and he's just doesn't bend. He doesn't care. And he said one of the things that he said as they were trying to cancel him, he said, "I heard that they're trying to throw me off Twitter," and he says, "I don't care because Twitter's not a real place. It's not a real place." He's standing firm. He's like, "Whatever, you'll throw me off of Twitter." And I think that we need to be. This is a small example to a larger point. We need to be willing to count the costs. We need to be counting the costs now of what it means to stand firm in the face of a cultural onslaught, where the view from the culture on the conservative Christian is it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So we need to count the costs now. We need to prepare ourselves now to suffer for our convictions, but we need to do that now, because in the moment you'll waver. And this is actually Rod Dreher wrote a fantastic book, Live Not by Lies. Rod Dreher, Live Not by Lies. If you haven't read that book, you should. That should actually be moved to the top of your read list, and you should get into it right away. It's really easy. It's a pretty easy read. It's quick. He's a really good writer, and but he discusses kind of some of this in the cultural trajectory of where we're going. Rod Dreher, Live Not by Lies, great book. But yeah, we need to be discussing. We need to formulate a plan now on how to combat the worldviews, and then we need to be living it out. And that's one of the things I love about Stand to Reason, right? It's at STR, we don't pull any punches, right? If you want resources on how to do this, just go to our blog, str.org. We've got so many resources there. Start looking at the courses that we're launching at STRU. Go to str.org/training and sign up for those classes. The courses are free. I'm about to film one this weekend on the exclusivity of Jesus. I think it's called Jesus Only One Way. And this is a claim that if you make out in the culture, I mean, right now it's very, very unpopular to claim objective truth in any regard, but then you start relating salvation to it or eternal destiny to it. People get highly offended. But we have classes on abortion. One just got launched. We have classes on the existence of truth. We have classes on tactics on how to talk to somebody. I've done them on the problem of evil, and Greg's done one on atheism, naturalism. I've done one on biblical justice, which is a huge topic right now in the culture conversation. I think it's actually going to get more. Anyways, go to STR. We're here for you to help prepare you. We are the salt and the light, and we must remember that this world is doomed. Well, yeah, God is making all things new, right? So, yes, judgment is coming, and but we need a way to figure out how to communicate that in a way that is palpable. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Karen. Yeah, that's right. So not the person, but the word, right? They said Karen is no longer acceptable. Make sure you say demanding or entitled white woman. Much better, right? Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't actually think that these people on all of these are really convicted about them. I think there's larger things at stake here. We must pursue truth. That's right, Lori. Nice job. Let's see. Question. You think that ontology and etymology are very important? Yeah. I mean, ontology most certainly is, and etymology. So, ontology. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the study of the pursuit of how we come to know things, and etymology is how words came about. And I think that it is important. But I think certain examples. Actually, you know what? Basket case might be a decent example of this. Basket case. It may have roots in something, right? It may have roots in something, but it's so far removed from where we are today that I'm not convinced that keeping that word in our vernacular is offensive. I'm not sure what are the risks? What's the harm? What's the benefit? I mean, I'm open to the conversation. I'll have the conversation with somebody, but I want to know what the risks are. Um, what's the harm? What's the benefit? We could ask that too. What's the benefit? So those things are important. Yes. Um, let's see here. Uh, would you say the ontology? Oh, wait, that's the same one. Okay. Laura, yes, it is lying. I'm assuming this has to do with my comment regarding calling somebody by their preferred pronoun, which I'm not supposed to say anymore, according to Stanford, right? Their pronoun, but no, it's their preferred pronoun. I mean, this is what their pronoun is boy, man, woman, he, she, according to their biology. Their preferred pronoun is what they would prefer to be called. I mean, this is not. I don't understand. I have trouble wrapping my mind around that change. It's I just because I know the background, I know what they're trying to do. I think is the only reason why it makes any type of sense to me. But if you really think about it, it's completely illogical. Makes no sense. Justice, thanks for tuning in again, man. I feel like you're always here. If they want to play the pronoun game, they should have your pronoun names ready. You may call me Your Majesty. That's funny. Yeah, the pronoun stuff's really hard for me. We want to make sure though that we remain respectful, right? You can communicate truth in a number of different ways, and one of those ways is you can be offensive. But if you're being offensive for offensive sake, it's not right. So we can control these things, and how we communicate with each other. And I think it's an important thing. Bo, it's good to see you on here. Justice, you guys are great. What about grace? Lori, what about grace? If we say something that offends someone, where's the grace and forgiveness? Well, I'm not sure what you mean. I think we always let your speech always be with grace as though seasoned with salt. Right. So we always want to be graceful in our approach, but it doesn't mean we don't say what's true. And sometimes the truth is offensive, and grace and offense aren't, I think, diametrically opposed. I think grace washes out offense, like we've experienced the ultimate grace, right? Grace is not grace is getting what you don't deserve. It's utter forgiveness. Mercy is kind of the other side of that. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. So these things, like I think that we extend grace when we're offended, but I'm not sure how grace factors in to the conversation on the other end of it. Often we forgive, right? Jesus talked about this, right? 7 times 70, right? And he's not talking about 490 times. He's saying you always forgive. You forgive. Why? Because God has forgiven you, right? As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. So we serve to be, we strive to be more and more like Christ in our forgiveness. Now, I'm not good at that. Oftentimes, but I repent and I move towards, I do the best that I can. Right. But we always have grace. Let's see what Justice here. Christians need to know how to play this game and be good at it. Answer a fool according to their folly, lest they be absolutely be wise in their own eyes. Absolutely, Justice. I do think that that right now it seems like the battle is being lost, um, because uh, we're oftentimes not good at playing the game, you know, and we see that out there with the stuff we're talking about, you know, the use of language, the canceling. I'm not saying we cancel people, but I think that we can hold fast and firm, choose what we support, what we don't support, call things out when we see them as unacceptable. Uh, Stop yoking ourselves with things that might be presented as a capitulation or kind of wavering. You know, call things up, be consistent. So yeah, we could learn how to play the game a little bit better. Um, uh, Dan, when I was first saved 14 years ago, I would have said they're all going to hell. Yeah. So thanks be to Jesus for smoothing me out over the years and not being done with me yet. Absolutely. I just recorded a podcast with some of the Stand to Reason folks, that's going to be aired, I think, in June. And we were giving advice to young Christian apologists was kind of the topic of the show. And we were talking about, have we ever done anything that we regretted? And I shared a story that it stands out in my mind. I hope it stands out in my mind forever. I was, my mom was over. She was in town. My mom lives on the East Coast. I live here in California. She's coming out for a visit, and I was talking to her, and she's she leans towards relativism, right? She's a product of the culture. And I'm talking to her about, and this is years ago, and I'm talking to her about, I'm smashing the relatives. You know, I'm taking the axe to the root of that false ideology, and I'm smashing. My mom pauses me, and she says, "You know what, Jon? What you're saying might be true, but the way that you're saying it is awful." And I remember being just crushed by that, not because like she was offending me, but because there was truth in what she was saying, right? Like what you're saying here, Dan. You know, oh, well, you're going to hell. You know, well, what does that do for the conversation? You know, Bible thumping somebody or constantly berating somebody even with the truth over and over and over again gets tiresome, weird. It makes people weary, and then they don't want to explore it anymore with you. So, anyways, I think that what you're saying here is true. We need to be smoothed out, and praise be to God that He does smooth us out, so to speak. But we can do that as we put on patience, as we learn more about who Jesus is. We become more like Jesus, and we put that on, and we put our identity in Christ, and we come to understand things that we ultimately aren't in control, but God is, and we trust in His sovereignty. But then we also know that, well, we are ambassadors for Christ, begging on behalf of Christ to be reconciled to God, right? 2 Corinthians 5:20. So we're His agents for change, but He ultimately does the change. So we have trust, that we have a working relationship built on incredible trust, and then we're used by God to do God's work, and that should hopefully give us to allow us to be calm, and when we talk to people, to represent Christ. You know, so good points there. Such were some of us. Lori, yes, we can choose not to be offended. That's right. That's a choice. Being offended, nobody should have total control of your emotional state. That's not healthy. No one. You can make choices on how you're going to allow things to how affect you emotionally. And like I said, we put our hope in Christ. We have a hope that does not disappoint. We have our eye on glory, you know, and that can help us move towards these topics without getting super upset. Let's see here. I don't know if this makes much sense. This is Isaac. I don't know if this makes any sense, but can institution or person really eliminate or control bias? Or is some sort of new bias simply being formed and established as a new standard? Great question, Isaac. You want a really good answer? Somebody who addresses bias really, really well is Mike Licona. In his book, The Resurrection of Jesus, A New Historiographical Approach. It's like this thick. Um, excuse me. But Michael O'Connor addresses bias really, really well. So um, is to our goal is to pursue unbiased, in my opinion. Our goal is to become as unbiased as we possibly can when looking at things. Part of being unbiased on certain issues is recognizing our bias. When I come to an issue, I am always going to come to the issue from the perspective that God exists. Because until I'm shown otherwise, that has been shown to me as true. So I'm not going to just shun that idea. Like, I'm not just going to get rid of God in order to evaluate something. I'm going to be honest, though, with my bias. I'm gonna with myself and with the person I'm talking to or whatnot. I'm gonna be forthright. Well, this is my perspective. We see this in reporting. Okay, so like it would be so much easier and so much better. I mean, we know anyway because the way people report, but it'd be great if all news agencies reported the voting records of their news anchors or their journalists, because I think that would help you understand where a person's coming from. And we're all biased. All of us are biased, and nobody just reports the facts, but we try to. And as long as we're upfront with our bias, it makes things easier. So, can an institution or person really eliminate or control their bias? I don't. I mean, I don't think so. Not in an ultimate sense, but you can be forthright and honest with it. You can let people know where you're coming from, in other words, and just be honest. Um, yeah. Or is some sort of new bias simply being formed and established as the new standard? Yeah, I mean, you should be always evaluating what you're believing. So new biases, new standards are coming in and out of your life constantly. But when you hold test all things, holding fast to that which is true. When you find the truth, you hold on to that. It doesn't mean you stop examining it, but you hold on to it, and you hold on to it tightly. And then when that truth is rocked, then you can go into kind of a reformation process, right? You dig into it, and you take it out, and the idea that you're holding this true, you can examine it from all sides and allow these new things that maybe caused you to question it weigh in on it. So your biases, but even then your bias is gonna come into it. And the bias is formed through life experiences, through what you read, through what you study, through what you feel, and stuff like that. So I hope that helps answer your question. Good question, Isaac. Yes, let's see here. Don't throw pearls to swine. Offended now? It is like absolutely impossible to offend me. This is just like what I tell people. Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm obtuse or just because I have a hope. I mean, you can say whatever you want about me. It's all been said before. It'll be said again. It doesn't mean I won't argue. It doesn't mean I won't uh, defend myself, but it won't ever be from a defensive position or an offended position. So, the bigger thing is in control. Let's see here. I wonder what the skeptic and atheist think of this stuff. Who's a skeptic and an atheist that I think would probably agree on a lot of this stuff? Peter Boghossian. Peter Boghossian? I think it's Peter Boghossian. He wrote Manual for Creating an Atheist, or Manual for Creating Atheists. He's a college professor, really smart, really smart, and he's like a super free speech guy. And he oftentimes agrees. Like, I think him and Dennis Prager have done some stuff together. Maybe you could search them in Google or whatnot. But he might agree with some of this stuff. The canceling of terminology, the canceling of people. He's outspoken against. So there's one. I'm sure honest skeptics, I think, uh, like real skeptics, philosophy skeptics or the theological skeptics, I think that they oftentimes we find a connection and an agreement on this type of stuff. Um, let's see here. Oh, did I get down to the no, there's tons of comments. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm just searching through looking for some questions because I'm actually gonna have to end in like 2 minutes because I have another video to get on. Here you go. Isaac, knowledge, wisdom, and character. Where have I heard that before? However, if your character is flawed, then your knowledge or wisdom won't matter since people not seriously consider what you're saying. Your character ethos matters. That's right. Knowledge, wisdom, character are three pillars of standard reason. And I agree with you. Character it's not more important, but it's pretty dang important. All of those are but it's certainly, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And there's a lot of so knowledge has to do with what you know. Wisdom is how you engage with people. Character is how you live your life. There's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of ways I misstep and don't engage people. And there's certain character flaws I have, but I would say that the character flaws, the more severe they are, like you can not know a lot of stuff, but if you have severe character flaws, the character flaws are more serious. I hope that's making sense. Character is very, very important. I think it's a component that's often missed when we talk about, especially Christian apologetics. And we've seen the devastation recently in the last couple of years, what severe character flaws can do to people and to ministries. And we need to be watching our character, living uprightly before the Lord, and chasing after Jesus, becoming more and more like him. That's my prayer every Sunday when I'm leading church or if I preach. I always try to include it in my prayer that, Lord, we just want to look a little bit more like you today. I certainly in my private prayer life, like when I'm at home in the mornings, when I pray, God, I just want to look a little bit more like your son. When my head hits the pillow tonight, would I just look a little bit more like Jesus? And that's all character stuff. I don't pray, God, would you, it's not bad to pray this, but God, would you help me know more about you? I mean, that's a good prayer. It's just, I don't pray it as much as I pray for my character. I pray that I look more like Christ. I live better, not for my salvation's sake, but because God's worth it. But this is a good comment, Isaac. Good job, bud. Awesome. You know what, with that, guys, because in 3 minutes, I have to get on another call. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. I want to let you guys know, okay, in the new year, our speaking schedules are filling up. If you'd like one of us from STR to come speak at your church or your conference or your youth group or whatnot, make sure you reach out to us, info@str.org. Our reality student apologetics conferences are going gangbusters, and we're going to be in Dallas middle of next month, end of next month. We're going to be in Dallas. If you go to realityapologetics.com, you'll see all the dates. We've got Dallas, we've got Philadelphia, and we've got Augusta, Georgia lined up for the rest of the season, February, March, April. And if you're in the area, we'd love to see you. And I've already mentioned the website and everything. If you need stuff, go to str.org, sign up for the STRU classes and dig in. That's why we're doing them. We're here for you guys to wrestle through these hard topics. So I hope this was beneficial to you. I appreciate you tuning in. I'm Jon Noyes, and this was To the Point. Thanks.